And now to our weekly Monday feature, a look at the week ahead in politics with CBS News political consultant Marc Ambinder. Okay, Marc, before we get to Iraq and the president's big speech on that, what do you make of this rally on the Mall over the weekend?
Well, two things. Number one, even if 87,000 or 97,000 people turned out, that Democrats and liberals couldn't turn out anything near that big in this election year. This rally strikes me actually as an incredibly quintessential rally because the Tea Party is an identity movement primarily. It's giving voice to concerns and frustrations of a very motivated group of Americans who no one really on the national level except for Glenn Beck and Sarah Palin and a few others are speaking to. And the way that we express our identity, in a sense, in civic life is through politics. And that's what they're going to do. They're going to go and they're going to vote in the fall. So this was, of course, it was a political rally. It wasn't politics in the sense that we think of, fighting over the partisan idea of the day, but it was in a much grander, much more rooted sense, exactly and precisely a political rally.
It was interesting to hear Glenn Beck. He said there wasn't a political figure that he didn't see a political figure anywhere that met the moment of this great unhappiness, which was kind of extraordinary since Sarah Palin was also speaking with
right.
him.
It was a slightly. I mean, Glenn Beck and Sarah Palin differ in many ways, and their relationship is not as cozy as one might think. I mean, in one part, I think Beck recognizes that for the most part, Sarah Palin's is about Sarah Palin Incorporated and building a brand at this point, and not about turning and harnessing this energy directly into politics. And so I think Beck actually makes an astute political observation. He doesn't want to go into politics either. He totally disclaimed any interest of running for president, I think because he enjoys the power he has as a communicator.
All right, from one communicator to another, the president will speak on Tuesday night about the war in Iraq. What's he trying to do from the Oval Office? Big, huge set-piece speech. What's the goal here for the president?
Well, we forget that as much as the president is managing, in a sense, the recovery from an enormous economic near depression, he is fundamentally a war president. We have gone from shock and awe 8 or 9 years later to support and assist. And the American people are going to hear from their commander-in-chief what that actually means. And why it's important, and what will happen in a year. I mean, there's so much going on. I think actually the subtext to this speech is not Iraq, it's Afghanistan, because the president's the policy review at the interagency level begins in a week and a half. It doesn't begin in September. Meaning in a week and a half, the service chiefs are going to start forwarding their recommendations that they've been collecting evidence and data to the Office of the Secretary of Defense. Then everything's going to go to the White House. And the president has to set, in essence, a course for the next several months because he's going to be talking a lot about Afghanistan and the way forward. He's going to anticipate, I think, another troop request from his generals. And so the goal here is to convince the American people that he's on top of the situation, that his strategy across the Middle East, across the middle of Asia on that continent is working, and people should give him a chance.
And that he is a president who can end wars, that he can successfully bring them to a conclusion.
Right.
I mean, this is, as you point out, this is sort of light at the end of the tunnel on Afghanistan, even though it's
right.
about Iraq.
Right.
Let me ask you a question about what John Boehner, the House Republican leader, is trying to do, which is, there was another email moments before we came on saying that he urges the president to give props to President Bush and to the troops for the surge strategy, which we all know that Senator Barack Obama was quite opposed to. What's Boehner's game here, and is he going to get any traction?
Well, Boehner actually has a factual point, which is correct, which is the surge strategy is indeed one reason why, even though there is political chaos, Al-Qaeda in Iraq still seems to be a fairly potent force. Iraq is much better off than it was before the surge began. And that's, if we look at how, what we know of the history of that decision, it was George Bush, and George Bush in some ways alone among his advisors who were constantly pressing for the surge. So Boehner has a point. But I don't know if that fits into what the White House is trying to communicate. I think I would not be surprised if the president doesn't mention George Bush in any way. I think he's going to talk about the future of Iraq and again, attempt to get this message forward. He knows how to manage wars, bring wars to their conclusion, which will buy him, in theory, some room on Afghanistan.
So the president's back from vacation. He talked about the 5th anniversary of Hurricane Katrina yesterday. He's going to talk about Iraq on Tuesday. Then he's got meetings about peace in the Middle East later this week. When's he going to get back to talking about the economy, the thing everybody's anxious about and growing more anxious about every day?
Well, it's a conundrum he has because he's perceived as not paying enough attention to the economy, but the more he talks about it, the more his numbers seem to go down. So perhaps it's a blessing in disguise. I mean, there's a job number that's going to come out on Friday that probably won't be terribly positive that he's going to have to respond to. And my sense is that at this point, far from having another grand plan to boost the economy, because the White House is essentially buffered in by the fact that Congress won't tolerate additional spending, which many economists think is really needed to quickly boost the economy, or the type of budget cuts that Wall Street seems to be looking for as cues. I think the goal at this point is to stay the course until after the November elections and then reset and think about how you move forward with a new Congress. I honestly, I've been asking this question for weeks. I don't know how he communicates about an economy that just isn't moving the way that he said it would be. And he bears responsibility for that. And it's not moving. And
he bears responsibility for the actual underlying economy, not the lack of ability to talk about it.
Not the lack of ability to talk about it, but he and his advisors were predicting, not the early on Christina Romer prediction that's one thing, that no one really expected the depth of the, but essentially the administration seemed to roll into the recovery. They dubbed this the recovery summer.
Sure.
This isn't the recovery summer. They were incorrect. People do not perceive this as the recovery summer. So the president is being held accountable for that by the voters, and I don't know what his response is, quite frankly.
We seem to see a tiny bit of his response in some of his recent remarks, and he did a little bit in his Katrina remarks yesterday, which is talking about the resilience and the impressive performance of the American people, and that's where he sees optimism. In other words, he can no longer see optimism in the actual economic numbers,
right?
The aggregate
measures, or in what government is able to do.
Exactly. So it's back to apple pie in America,
right? And that may be his only way to go, because my sense is that the White House simply doesn't know how to expedite the economic recovery at this point.
Right.
If they don't know what to do, they probably don't know what to say.